So, Narelle, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about counting and the sequence in which we learn some counting ideas. And if you can illustrate that with the bomb blocks, but we'll look at some other materials as well.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. So when we're counting, we talk a lot about the counting principles, and we're going to move on and use those principles applied to a representational material.
Okay, so when you're talking about counting principles, what you're talking about is things like knowing the stable order of the numbers, that it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on.
Yes, that's right.
There's a one-to-one correspondence involved.
Yep.
And the last name you say is for the total set.
Collection, that's right.
That would be that.
And I think we've got a little slide.
Okay, so I'll just take us into that spot there, just to illustrate that for us.
Yeah.
Let me find it.
Okay,
so that slide there, yep.
Yeah, so they're the initial counter principles that we're going to look at with the bomb blocks in a minute. So especially the stable order and the one-to-one correspondence as we go.
All right, so let's have a look down on the visualizer and have a look at it. Yep.
Lovely. So these we're just going to do to 5, but we could repeat this then later to 10. Yep. Initially, when you give the children the blocks and you ask them to order them from the shortest block to the longest block, they love making this type of pyramid arrangement. It's symmetrical and it's got something about it, and that's a great starting activity. We want to move from this to the set of steps, and there's a mathematical reason. So while this is great to teach from the shortest to the longest, or from the least number to the greatest number, the reason we want to move to here is to show that in the counting sequence, each number is greater by 1 than the number before. Yeah,
so the one more thing. And the length becomes more obvious here too, doesn't it?
Yes.
You can see because we're starting from the same point.
And the length builds that foundation for the number line.
Yeah.
Yeah, and where numbers are in relation to each other. Whereas on this one, we've got a half block each side, and you can't quite see that as nicely. So we're going to go through a sequence of skills that when teaching counting, we're really going to break that down into the tiny little sub-skills.
Okay.
So firstly, we just want to count, matching, and I'll go first, and then do you mind being the student?
In a second, yeah.
So when we teach, we want to make sure that we triangulate, I think we've got a little slide, the physical material.
Yeah, let's have a look at that, yeah.
Yeah, the physical material, which in this case is the block, the word that we say, and the written numeral all at the same time. And we want these connections to be made to develop a complete understanding of what the number 8 means.
Okay, so when you talk about the written numeral, the symbol here, do you mean children have to write it or?
Not at all. That would be a handwriting skill.
Yeah.
So we're trying to focus on the mathematics, which is the connection of reading or pointing to that number.
Okay, so we recognise the 5 looks like that. Yes,
that's right.
Yep.
So if we go back to the visualizer, the first activity would just be counting in order, starting at 1 and making sure we say and touch at the same time to make those connections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I would model and then the student would repeat.
Okay, so there we go. So I think I can do that. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's it. So you're getting that stable order with the right words and you're getting that one-to-one correspondence. Now, it doesn't seem a lot more difficult, but this time when we count, I'm only going to put the first block, and I want you to still count in order from 1 to 5. But I want you to say the number that comes next, and then I'll place the block.
Okay, so before I had a bit of a scaffold or a prompt.
Before you had the prompt, this time, this would be the next step in the sequence.
Okay,
so you start at 1.
Okay, so I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's right. And so that seems like a simple adjustment to make, but it's actually quite a different mathematical thing that we're asking the students to do. So when we're confident they can count forwards, the next step in the sequence would be to remove some blocks. So
Sounds a bit of like a puzzle.
It does, and close your eyes.
Okay,
so you can't
I'm not
see.
Looking. Yeah,
okay, and I'm going to hide a block.
Yeah.
Okay, now you can open your eyes.
Oh, okay, so this reminds me a lot of those missing number type tasks that you see.
In a lot of the numeracy assessments that we do. And so this is building a very physical example of that missing number.
Well, there's a lot going on here because I'm looking at the number that's going to be 1 more than 2,
Yes.
one less than
2.
Yeah, 4 in this case here. Yeah. Later on, language dependent, I'm looking for the number that comes between
And
2 and 4. Whoa.
yes, and making sure that when we teach, we're just focusing on that one concept.
Yeah, there's a lot going on
So if I
potentially.
am focusing on that word in between,
Yeah, that's a whole.
that's my focus. But at the moment, we're just going to focus on the stable order
Yep. So,
and counting. So when you do count, make sure that you touch at the same
okay, so I'm going to go 1, 2. I think the number that goes here is 3.
3.
Okay, and then I've got 4, 5. Yes.
Well done for touching, as you
Yeah.
say. And so then we could extend that, still with the missing number, but when Paul closes his eyes this time, I'm going to make it even more difficult. You can open your eyes.
Oh, this is a bit tricky. So,
oh, yes.
okay, so same thing. We just go
same
one
thing.
concept.
One concept.
Okay, so I'm going to go 1,
Yes.
2, 3, 4, and 5. Yes.
Yeah, and you'll notice I didn't stop to praise you in the middle because
okay.
that would interrupt
Yeah.
your count, and we're wanting you to focus on that counting flow. So well done. After we've got a missing number, the next thing we need to do is to be able to count on from any number.
Okay, yep.
So in order to count on from any number, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes.
Okay, yep.
I'm going to split the steps
Mm-hmm.
and then open your eyes.
Yep.
Now you can see what's coming.
Oh, but you've covered. That's a bit tricky. Yeah, all right. So,
Now, this time we're not starting at 1. We're going to start at 2, and you're going to still count and touch. And after you say it, I'm going to return the
so I've got to
block.
hold the 2 in my head
That's right.
and count 3.
3.
Okay. 4, 5.
That's right. And with the holding it in your head, it's actually, even if you're having difficulty with that and you do say 2, you're still not getting confused because the 2's there.
Yes,
so then
okay.
the number after. So then we would practice that with you closing your eyes and us counting on
Okay.
from different numbers.
Okay, yeah.
That's right.
So there's a fairly repetitive notion of this that once you get the basic idea of how to do this,
Yes.
you just change the numbers you start with.
That's exactly right. And often we just extend vertically.
Yeah.
So we'll start one and we think, oh yes, they can count to 5. Let's count to 10.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole lot of things within counting to 5 that we really want to develop. We just don't want to go up. We also want to make sure
We
we're
need to
getting that
spend
breadth.
for more clarity.
Yeah, that's right. So after we can count forwards from any number, then we're going to do what we're talking about later about that introducing a different word for the same concept. So this time I'll split the steps again. So we're only changing one thing.
look.
Okay,
Yeah.
this time I'll split it here
Yeah.
and open your eyes.
Okay, yep.
This time, can you tell me the number after
Oh,
3?
okay, so here's where the language is linking.
Yeah,
Where we
very.
and sometimes I've noticed, like before, you could have 3 or 4 things and people are getting their head,
Yes.
Okay, so the number that comes after 3 would be 4.
Good, and I really like the way you use that whole sentence and the word after, and then we would practice that at different spots.
Okay.
Moving on from here, when we teach, we tend to go in a concrete representation or
Yep.
abstract view. So we've got a little slide that's got a number line on.
Okay, so I'll just take us to that one and sit here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you can see here, in order to get the number line down the bottom under the word symbols, we're looking at the number after 7.
Okay.
So we could have repeated the activity we just did with a number line to 5, but covering up the, so start at the 3 and what's the next one. So we need to be able to, right from very young, be able to recall what is missing in that number line. And that's quite different from starting at 1 and counting 1, 2, 3, oh, it's 4.
So in this case here, so we're talking about the number that's 1 more than 7.
7, yeah.
What happens when a child says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Yes, and then I would go back. Right, so if they're doing it on a number line, that's I would go back one step, which would be to use the blocks to build the set of steps, split the steps, and say, oh, start at 7 and then go.
So they're not always laboriously
That's
Otherwise, they're going to get this idea of counting in ones a lot, and
and
that's going to persist.
yes, and in the same way we were looking on that earlier slide, it was the connections between one number. We just had one block and one word and one symbol. If you look on this PowerPoint slide, the next thing we need to do is make those connections between numbers. So we've got the 7, we've got the 8, and then we start looking at the relationship between those numbers.
And look, I've noticed there on your physical model, you've got a 10 strip.
Yes.
And you and I have chatted quite a bit about the 10 frame and how basically you go from a 5 frame, a 10 strip, because you're getting that length. And you've used 2 colours to emphasise that, so you can see that 8 is more, goes longer. All those cues are coming there to understand that bit. And then later on, we can go to something like a 10 frame.
Yeah, that's right. And I've often heard you talk about it's really important that children step out to get that. Do you want
to get that length
example?
idea? I was just saying that often children don't play board games as much anymore. And essentially, say when you roll a 6 and you move along a track, and I like a linear track, not like, I'm not having to go at snakes and ladders, but that track goes in and on itself. Which one is a long linear track, heads in that way. When you do 6, you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, when you step that out, that's quite a long length.
Yes.
Plus, there's a cue in terms of the time.
Yeah.
All right. But if I do 3, I only step out 1, 2, 3. I don't go as far. It didn't take as long, which is the larger number. That sort of thing. So they're all cues about length. And that's why some people say, only mostly worry about number. Well, you can't just do number, because you need to understand some measurement and length.
That's right. And as you say, mathematics is all about making those connections.
It's connected, yeah.
That's right. Which brings us quite nicely into that concrete representational abstract. So when we are making those connections, we start with things like the counters on a 10 strip.
Yeah.
And then can we see the next slide?
Yeah, okay. So there we go.
I think it's the other way.
Okay, stop there.